Welcome to the Ringer NFL show. Sheil Kapadia here. Welcome if you're watching on FanDuel TV or if you're listening on Spotify, joined by my friend Steven Ruiz and Diante Lee. Ruiz, we're all in the same room. It's incredible.
Maybe we should fight.
Maybe we got to tell you. You mentioned throwing some stuff off the table. Who knows where these arguments will lead to, Diante?
I'm ready to bring back up Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy today. I think this will be a good week for us to finally hash this out.
Who knows? There were some blowouts in Week 7. There were some close games in Week 7. There will be some narratives shaping after Week 7. As we know, we're going to talk about the 3 biggest games, what we learned from them to start out here. First one, Detroit Lions, Minnesota Vikings. Comes down to the end. Lions win that game 31-29. Ruiz, what did we learn about the Vikings and Sam Darnold and Brian Flores, or the Lions and Ben Johnson and Jared Goff? What was kind of your big takeaway from this game?
I think this game was about Jared Goff and what he did under pressure. He was pressured on over half of his dropbacks in this game. We've seen him have success against Brian Flores. We talked about that on the Friday show. But in those games last year, those 2 games, it was like the ideal environment for a Jared Goff game. This was not. This is a environment he struggles against, and he thrived. He averaged nearly 15 yards per attempt under pressure in this game. So it's not like Flores wasn't getting pressure. He was just getting beat.
Yeah, it was an impressive. I mean, my thing with the Lions, I'm just like, they're the best team in the NFC right now. Partially because of that, the run game. I like the way this game moved, Deontay, where it started out, it's rocky. You're going, like Ruiz mentioned on Friday, is this going to be one of those Jared Goff games? Then they come back, and I feel like it gets, they don't get enough credit, but 4 straight touchdown drives against that Vikings defense. To do that was incredible. So I think the Lions are the best team in the NFC right now.
I'm with you. And the thing that I think I was maybe most encouraged by was that they were able to find success multiple ways, right? And I think that was what we talked about a lot for the Friday show, is that the one thing that Brian Flores is going to do, it's force you into uncomfortable situations and make you have to change the way you play specifically to attack this defense. And I thought that Jared Goff did a really good job of that. First of all, in the play action game, I thought he did a good job of being conservative, taking the checkdowns when guys were bailing out in zone coverage and allowing his running backs, allowing his tight ends to go get him yards after the catch. And then I think that he didn't panic in those third down, pure drop back situations where Brian Flores is really loading up the line of scrimmage with potential blitzers, whether they're dropping or whether they're bringing guys from unconventional spots. I thought that he was smart with knowing when to take his chances downfield. We saw some good throws in the seam to Amon-Ra St. Brown. We saw him not be afraid to work the middle of the field, period, against these mixes of looks, whether it was playing quarters or cover 2 or just straight man or a zero look. I thought that he was confident in all of his answers. And I think that speaks not only to Ben Johnson, who I know deserves a lot of credit for this, but like you said, to Jared Goff for knowing how to execute against this defense when he's not in an ideal situation, not up by 2 scores, and not playing in a game script that's most favorable to him.
I thought the long touchdown pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown was like the best illustration of the development of Jared Goff. He kind of had a sidestep, a free rusher, or just pressure right in his lap to make that throw all the way downfield. It reminds me of the 4th down against the 49ers in the NFC title game, where he kind of has to move to the side, and that makes him miss the throw, ends up being dropped because it's a tough catch. I don't know if Jared Goff from last year makes that throw that he made to St. Brown in this game.
Well, and if you take it all the way back to what it looked like when the Rams lost the Super Bowl in 2018 to the Patriots. He's obviously not that quarterback, and there's a lot of conversation to be had about how much distance he has to make up to get into the top tier of quarterbacks. But what I think we saw today, and what we saw really over the last 20-plus games of regular season from him, is that he's a quarterback that's good enough to be in these situations, and he can deliver. You may not be able to count on it as consistently as those Tier 1 quarterbacks that we all know and are easy to identify, but I think that he's shown that there's probably a bigger gap between he and the rest of the quarterbacks that are not in Tier 1 than there is between him and those Tier 1 quarterbacks, and you should feel really good about that if you're the Lions right now.
I do think, like, the difference between him and the top quarterbacks is the ability to extend and make plays under pressure, but behind that offensive line, in this offense, he doesn't really have to do that to the extent that those players do. He doesn't have to be Josh Allen or Mahomes, and he's averaging 11 yards per attempt under pressure this year.
Right.
So he's doing it. He's doing what those top quarterbacks do, even though it's manufactured.
Right.
How many games are we going to have where it's like third quarter, Jared Goff is 16 for 16.
Right.
It's like, what? 16? Now, there was some sacks mixed in there, but, I mean, he finishes this game 22 for 25 for 280 yards, 4 touchdowns. I thought that last drive was a great sort of summation of all the things you're talking about. They're running the ball. They schemed up a beautiful play to Jahmyr Gibbs. Jared Goff is making tough throws. So if you're the Lions, you got to feel good. I mean, they faced a lot of adversity. Like, even when they're kicking out there, I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot they lost their kicker in the summer. They lose Aiden Hutchinson. They've had different guys be injured, and here they are. They just keep moving on. And if you can put together that offensive performance against that defense, and we've seen what that defense has done, not against the Niners and the Texans and some other teams. So it's not like they haven't been tested. Just a really impressive performance from the Lions. What about the Vikings, Ruiz? Do you look at them differently? Do you think, what's the difference between what you thought about the Vikings on Friday versus what you think about the Vikings now?
I don't know if it changed that much. I think
I agree with that,
we've seen
by
that
the
this
way.
defense isn't going to just beat everyone it comes across. It's not going to be the number one defense, probably. I don't think they have the talent to be the number one defense. They've been carried by scheme so far. And when you come into a game against an offensive coordinator like Ben Johnson, you're going to lose some of those battles. But I did think the Lions defense looked good without Aiden Hutchinson. Like, it wasn't the greatest performance, but it was an average performance. And that's all they need right now with the way the offense is playing. I do think Darnold, you saw both sides of Darnold in this game. You saw the high-level throw, the downfield
He's
throw to
trying,
Addison.
Deante. I can see the devil and the angel in his head right now. He's like, do I want to do this right
That's
now?
why he prefaced it with all the good stuff with the
he's
Vikings.
Like, trying to be nice.
He
He's
wants
like,
to come
Sheil
back
might
to
bring
just
up
slam
Purdy
Darnold.
later, so I need to save some energy. All right, but sorry, go to interrupt.
But no, that's always going to be the question mark with this team. Like, what else are you going to question on it? You're not going to question the play calling with O'Connell. You're not going to question the receiving core with Jefferson and now Addison making a big play. The run game, Aaron Jones looked fantastic again in this game. Had that first touchdown. I mean, Darnold has to be the question mark. There's a reason why they drafted a quarterback in the first round. I know Darnold wasn't on the roster yet, but if they really believed in Darnold, they wouldn't have drafted a quarterback.
And ultimately, this offense moves the ball okay. I just think in those high leverage situations, especially in the second half, to the point that we're having about quarterback play in tough situations, you saw all the ways that Darnold could have made a difference if he was a ceiling-raising quarterback and what he has to resort to because he's not. Right, I do think that it was a little bit too easy in the second half for Detroit to really play sticky coverage on Justin Jefferson, on Jordan Addison, and put Darnold into uncomfortable situations where now he has to extend. And you see that it's not, he can't always extend, get his feet reset, and then push the ball downfield. He's not always going to make a guy miss and then go get 10 to 12 yards on a scramble when he finds air. And those opportunities were there because Detroit's going to play a lot of man coverage. Yeah. So I do think you should probably feel okay if you're a Vikings fan. Obviously, when you zoom out and think about preseason expectations versus where they stand presently, but even in a game like this against a team that is a top-end contender, you can go punch for punch with a team like that. I do just think that you got a clear look in those third down and obvious passing situations in the fourth quarter when you know that you have to drive the length of the field, that there are just going to be some limitations with Darnold, and it does put a little bit more stress on Kevin O'Connell. You should probably just feel okay because you have probably one of the 5 best play callers in the NFL, and I think if they landed in this situation again, they'll probably be able to play step for step with just about anybody in the league if they needed to.
Yeah, I don't feel much differently about him because I think we've probably been on a similar wavelength with Darnold where he's playing way better than I thought he was going to play this year. I will admit that. I didn't think he even had this ceiling in him, and they had the ball with 4:16 left where it's like, do not give Detroit the ball back here, and they run it twice, and then it's Darnold on third down, and they have to punt it back to the Lions. But I'll tell you what, that Vikings defense, I mean, forget scheme and just the way they play is so, I mean, their relentlessness in trying to take the ball away on every single play in every situation, and it paid off in a big way. I mean, it flipped the game in this game when Josh Metellus knocks it out of David Montgomery's hands. And it's just, I was just thinking that as I'm watching them, I'm like, they're giving up touchdown drives, but I'm just like, no defense in the NFL plays like this. I love this. That's going to keep them in every game.
No, and they bounced back in the second half. Like, Detroit was marching up and down the field in the first half, and you thought, oh, well, they lost. Like, Flores lost the game planning war, and I don't know if he's going to be able to adjust, and it looks like a 40-point game for Detroit. But that didn't happen in the second half. They stopped him in the second half. Goff has that one drive late, but I would still feel optimistic about this defense going forward, even if it's not going to be that number 1 EPA defense in the league. Yeah. Still going to be top 10, top 5. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that battle between those two was fun because early on, Flores was getting to Goff, and then the Lions figure it out, and then, like you said, the Vikings come back. So I think it did live up to the hype in that way. All right, Let's take a break. We come back. We got other games to talk about. Packers, Texans, Chiefs, 49ers. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. Super Bowl rematch, Diante. Chiefs 49ers. Kind of ended up being a bit of a snoozer. Chiefs win that game 28-18. 49ers have some injuries. Purdy doesn't play well. What did we learn from this game?
I think that we've seen this, and this is not just this game. I think this has been over weeks now with the 49ers. It's the shrinking margin for error week over week. And then this week, when you lose Brandon Ayuk mid-game to what, are seeing that the 49ers fear is an ACL injury, we'll obviously see as things continue to develop going into this week. But you start looking at some of the bodies that they just don't have available to them, and it's landed them in a situation, A, by necessity because of just who is and isn't available, and B, by choice by Kyle Shanahan, where now Brock Purdy is this quarterback that has to drop back in all these pure drop back situations and has to solve all these problems for this offense. And I just don't know. I don't know if it's fair to him as a quarterback.
It's not.
And he's not playing well. I don't want to take this as Brock Purdy is being failed by Kyle Shanahan, but I do think that there needs to be a more even distribution of the scheme opening things up for Purdy and Purdy having opportunities to extend on other situations and push the ball down the field. Because right now I just feel like they are playing this boom or bust style of offense that doesn't fit the personnel that they have because their whole complement of offensive playmakers isn't available. So you're not getting the best version of what you could out of this game. And I think that's a large part of why this game was such a dud, at least from San Francisco's point of view.
To your point, Purdy has thrown for over 30 attempts in every game this year. Only 5 times last year. He's already passed that number in 7 games. Like that says it all right there. And I think Shanahan is almost overcompensating for the loss of Christian McCaffrey, and he's almost lost his way and forgot why this offense has been so good. It's the run game, and they're not a run first team right now. They're a pass first team, and like you said, it's exposed Purdy's weaknesses.
Well, that's the question, is why are they playing this way? Because they're playing the way the Niners have not played before. They're not using play action. They're not lining up under center. Purdy's passes are going further than any other quarterback downfield.
The tight window throws.
Tight window throws.
Forever.
All the stuff we've talked about Kyle Shanahan forever, that, hey, if you play in a Kyle Shanahan offense, you get X, Y, and Z. You're not really getting those right now. Is it... And so, some of it is definitely Purdy when he's, scrambling and running around. Mm-hmm. But that's not everything. Some of those things I just mentioned are structurally by the person designing and calling the offense. So, I don't know, Ruiz, why do you think this is the style of offense we're seeing this season?
I don't know. There was some talk before the Christian McCaffrey injury that they would be more of a drop-back team this year. Some of the beat reporters reported it during training camp. So, maybe this was the plan all along. I don't know. Maybe they want to put Purdy to the test and see the full measure of Purdy's skill set, because they do have to pay him next year if they're going to pay him. So maybe this is what they want to do. Maybe
Shanahan, the way his brain is wired, he's how am I winning this game this weekend? He'd be like, John Lynch, shut up. I don't care about. I'm not testing this for any other reason.
Yeah, but the things you've seen are the things we gave Purdy credit for last year, and I'm using the royal we. I didn't give him credit for these things at all. I fought these things to the nail, but the timing. It's not there. He's holding on the ball longer than Justin Fields was holding on to the ball. Yeah. The accuracy. He missed so many throws in this game. The decision making. All of that has gone out the window. I think it's proof that Shanahan's offense was, kind of elevating him. But right now it's holding him back.
I would agree with that. And I think that you can see him pressing, especially when you can tell the game was tight, right? In those high leverage situations, missing that throw that turns into an interception on that corner route. That to me is a quarterback that's pressing. Because you should be able to make that throw as an NFL quarterback 99 times out of 100, not knowing that your receiver is going to break short because he's getting man coverage and sailing the ball. That's a quarterback to me that I think in that moment was thinking a little bit bigger than what you should be asking a quarterback like Purdy to be thinking in those moments. And then obviously once Brandon Ayuk went down, and this is prior to, they just weren't getting any separation from their receivers either. And if you know you're going to get a lot of tight man coverage, you know that you're going to have an opportunity to run the ball, even if it's not going to be an outside zone run that pops for 25, right? I do wonder if maybe because the explosive runs are not as readily available for this team, if Kyle Shanahan is losing confidence in it. Because one thing that we've known from this offense is they were as good at generating explosive runs as most teams were at generating explosive passes. And that has obviously not been on the table in the same way. But I don't think the defenses have shown them enough to bring him out of that world. So that's probably the thing that I'm most hung up by when I watch this offense is you see the third quarter when Kyle Shanahan finally decides, okay, we know we're not beating this team deep downfield. It's time to get under center and run some 21 personnel zone. And Jordan Mason looks great.
Yeah.
And then again, now it feels like you build a little bit of rhythm with that, and it almost like he takes that as an opportunity to say, okay, Brock, go ahead and get back in the gun and try to push the ball downfield. And we have just not seen that consistently work enough to me to justify changing their entire offensive approach.
But I think the main problem, though, is red zone.
Yeah.
Because he talks about that. Like, if you listen to the commentators who are talking to him in the production meetings, they're saying, oh, yeah, he's talking about how hard it is in the red zone without Christian McCaffrey. In the open field, maybe he's overcompensating, thinking, well, we're not going to score when we get into the red zone because they've settled for a lot of field goals.
Yeah.
We better get a 40-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is to throw the football, or at least that's what he thinks right now.
All right, I'm gonna fall into the trap. Somehow I have become the I don't know when it happened. I don't know if you guys like drugged me or something, and all of a sudden I woke up one day.
You got on the podcast with me. Everybody's a Purdy guy compared to me.
You're right. I think that is what happened. That was easily solvable. All right, I will say this though. He didn't play well today. There's no doubt about it. If Dak Prescott or Justin Herbert or name another quarterback you choose to name didn't have their first, second, and third wide receivers and their running back and had a bad game like that, what would you be leading off a podcast saying they played poorly, they stunk, all their weaknesses were exposed, or would it be, well, they had some things working against them?
Well, luckily we don't have to use a hypothetical with Justin Herbert. He's dealt with these conditions like the last 4 years, and it's never looked like this. It never looks like
Okay,
this.
They were second in passing DVOA coming into the game. This is literally second in the entire NFL in passing DVOA with no McCaffrey, with the injuries. So this is a one-game thing. I actually don't think he's played great the previous 2 weeks either, even though the numbers looked good. But overall, this has not been like a complete disaster of an offense.
No, that's fair, but it is a Shanahan offense, and we have a high bar for Shanahan. So even if we're criticizing him, the offense is still better than 90% of the offenses out there.
True.
And it's definitely better than a Greg Roman offense or a Mike McCarthy offense.
Greg Roman watching this going, what did I do to you guys? I used to like the show, and now I'm just catching the strike.
You know what's funny? Sitting next to you, obviously knowing my interest in the Eagles and you covering the Eagles for us at The Ringer, this feels so much like how we would have been talking about Philadelphia last year if their record was a little bit more indicative of how they were playing on a week-by-week basis. Where you can look and see, like, hey, this is probably still going to be, by DVOA, by success rate, by EPA, one of the 8 to 10 best offenses in the league, almost sight unseen, because you have a high-level play caller, because you have a competent quarterback, and at least if some of the pieces are healthy offensively, you've probably got enough to threaten defenses deep downfield or be able to pound the rock when you need to. But you watch the game, and if you know how to watch a game and how Kyle Shanahan likes to call a game, or what we think of with the Kyle Shanahan offense, it looks pretty clear that things are disjointed right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that connection point is, because it feels so clearly like there is a divide between the way they thought they were going to run offense when Christian McCaffrey was on this roster and when he's not available. It looks almost like they haven't spent any time on the old maybe Jimmy G style of play, where you do get into more heavy personnel sets, more of your, what we see in Miami, that 2.2 seconds, get to your back foot, and you're just throwing the ball in the middle of the field. And that's not to guarantee that will work. We talked about on the Friday show that Steve Spagnuolo does a great job of taking away stress on his linebackers and safeties in that intermediate area in the middle of the field. But I think that when you know the run game is working, or when you start to catch a rhythm in the run game, you want to be able to have that to at least force defenses to honor it. I don't know if there was really any point where they went play action and it felt like Kansas City was in a position where they had to honor the run to be able to pry open those throwing windows.
Yeah, the most interesting, I can get to the place where it's like, Purdy's not playing well. Purdy's scrambling too much. He's getting too in love with that. I don't understand the Shanahan aspect of it. Why the structure of the offense. If anything, you would think with the injuries, you would lean more into, hey, we got to make his life easier and do, be more methodical and not push the ball downfield. So it's like a big story. I mean, is this the year from hell for the 49ers? When you were mentioning the Eagles, I'm like, I still think I'm not giving up on the 49ers. Like you said, when we're in December, we're probably going to be like, yeah, they're probably going to make the playoffs. But stuff does keep adding up. And now with this Ayuk injury, who knows if it is an ACL or not, what this is going to look like.
And this feels like rock bottom in terms of like the injury luck.
Yeah.
Like they were missing their top 3 receivers. And their fourth guy, Ricky Pearsall, before the season got shot. This was his first game back from getting shot. The season from hell, I think we need a stronger term.
I know. Think of all the things that have happened. It really is a lot. Other side of the ball. Ho-hum, Chiefs, 10-point win, underdogs on the road, undefeated. Here we go. I mean, Diante, do we get too bored with this team? Should we have led the show with the Chiefs just went on the road in a Super Bowl rematch and won by 10?
No, because this didn't look like a good Chiefs game, like, at all. And I think we were all sitting together in the same row here in the studio watching the game, and I think I looked over to Sheil and I said, there's no way you could have convinced me that this 49ers defense could hold Patrick Mahomes to less than 200 yards passing, and it doesn't really feel like they have any chance at controlling this game. And that was just clear basically from the second quarter on that they had no control of this game in spite of the fact that this defense played over its heads, I would say, based on the guys that are missing, them not having Dre Greenlaw. You don't have Javon Hargraves anymore. Talanoa Hufanga is on IR again. They are missing a lot of bodies, and they're really kind of constricted in how they can play, especially up against a quarterback that they know they have to respect. And I thought they did really well, and I think that if they maybe gotten a little bit more out of their offense without the Brock Purdy turnovers, the flow of the game maybe goes differently. But to answer your question directly, no, I don't think that this is time to say, hey, our bad as a as a podcast, and that the Chiefs are playing better than we're giving them credit for. They're playing poorly and they continue to win. I do think that just speaks to, and I said this week 1 when they beat Baltimore, they just have this uncanny knack to know exactly when they need a play. And this is maybe specific to Patrick Mahomes more than anybody else on that roster. He always knows how to get 7 when his team needs 6, 13 when his team needs 11, getting into the end zone when it looks like everything is covered. I don't know what you're supposed to do when you play well and this guy continues to get them out of bad situations.
No, we put Andy Reid on Fraud Watch a couple weeks ago. Well, I did. I don't want to rope you guys into that take because that's
I'm with you on that.
But it didn't get any better in this game. I saw Carson Wentz in the red zone on my TV today. The 4th and 1 punt fake.
Yeah.
You have the best player in the world, and you take him off the field
when you need
you need 1 yard near midfield. You're just overthinking things, and I think that's been a theme for the last year and a half. Like some of these red zone plays, I know they're fun to watch, especially when they pull them off. But even going back to last year, they left a lot of meat on the bone because they were trying these crazy plays in the red zone when you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
When you have Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, their explosive offense was a Mecole Hardman end around, a Mecole Hardman jet sweep, and that was not what we were sold coming into the year. We thought that they were making a reinvestment in adding dynamic playmaking to the outside. Obviously, not having Hollywood Brown does change the dynamic of that depth chart, but I don't know if it was going to be any different even if he was available. Xavier Worthy, I think, outside of like the gadget plays, has really been more of a non-factor, and they've really been trying to lean on Travis Kelce in Rashee Rice's absence, and even that hasn't really come up as well as you might expect. So I don't have a great explanation for how it is that this team continues to put up 24 or more points on a week-by-week basis, but they keep doing it because they have the best quarterback that's ever lived.
Yeah, I do wonder how we're thinking if Mahomes hits that shot to Worthy where he's open and gets behind the defense. I don't quite remember how that drive ended. They might have gotten points anyway, but we haven't seen those explosive plays.
I think it was an interception drive, actually, because it was a weird back-to-back.
Worst case possible, but we haven't seen those plays enough. Yeah. And going back to 2021, it's been an issue, and Mahomes kind of overcame it in 2022, and I don't think defenses quite realized how limited they were in the passing game once Tyreek Hill left. They saw a lot of man coverage in 2022. Defenses have gone back to that soft zone shell, and they can't beat it, and they don't have a guy that can beat it anymore in the receiving core. They don't have Kelce playing like the best tight end ever.
Right.
The best 16 for 27, 154-yard, 2-interception game I've seen.
You'll ever see.
I mean, he makes the plays at the end there, but this was not the offense is working at a high level. Because their previous game, I mean, when they played the Saints, that was the offense was moving at a high level. Now we look at that Saints defense, and maybe it's not that hard to do that against the Saints.
That's the difference between the two quarterbacks in this game, and it's the offense isn't working for either of them, but one is still keeping the offense afloat and keeping the team in the win column, and the other one is kind of. I do think Purdy is doing admirable. Like, where would this team be without his scrambles?
Oh,
Where would they be?
unbelievable. Hold on, rewind the tape. Wait a minute, what is
glad
happening?
this happened while we're all
Yeah,
together.
I wouldn't have believed it. I would have thought someone overtook Ruiz's body. But
That means an insult is coming very soon. No, I don't need to make any insults. Tom Brady was doing it enough in his own way.
Yeah, he really was going after him. I agree with that. He was, most of it was warranted. It wasn't like a play where it's like, why is he being hard on him? Usually it was a bad play by Purdy when he said it, but it will be interesting to monitor that throughout the season. Who is he going after? Because the Lions game, I mean, he was over the moon with Ben Johnson when he did that game. Dak Prescott, I feel like he's been a little up and down, but probably more complimentary than not complimentary. So, yeah, it doesn't take much to see what Tom Brady thinks. So, Niners fall 3-4, and the Chiefs improve to 6-0. All right, take another break. We come back. We talk Packers, Texans. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. Packers, Texans, the quarterback, C.J. Stroud, Jordan Love. Not exactly the shootout, high level, which guy would you rather have for 10 years? It doesn't matter. You'll win Super Bowls with either of them type matchup. Maybe we envisioned. But Ruiz, what did you think about this game? Texans offense doesn't play well. Packers are kind of shooting themselves in the foot over and over again, but they come back and get the victory at the end.
No, I think the story is Houston's offense and how bad it's been. It's not even in this game alone. It's all season. They're 20th in EPA. They're behind the Panthers in success rate. The Carolina Panthers, who started Bryce Young for 2 games. Like, unacceptable, especially with the expectations that were raised for this team coming into the season. Yeah. And I'm not going to blame C.J. Stroud for it, because when you watch the games, you're like, oh, he's doing his best. He's playing brilliant football.
I totally agree. And I'm sure, I don't know if this will be the week where C.J. Stroud will start to take some of those, look at the number. But it's not C.J. I don't know how you watch them and think it's C.J. Stroud. Now, their run game got going a little bit today. But, Diante, you pointed this out, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but all summer I was saying the Texans are going to be good because their offensive line got crushed with injuries last year, and they're going to be, they have to be healthier this year, and that's going to help C.J. Well, their offensive line isn't playing great. The play calling, I mean, that's crazy. 20th in EPA per drive, and I think 27th in success rate for a quarterback who's playing at this level. And now it's getting a little late. Like, we were doing this after 2 weeks, but now it's after week 7.
1,000%. And they have not been able to put together a week where they can protect the quarterback as well as they run the ball and vice versa. I think it's odd to me that, and I don't want to believe, and this is not to say that Joe Mixon isn't a good football player, but the absence of Joe Mixon was not the reason why they couldn't move the ball when he was gone, right? And I don't know if anything as special is happening now that he's back. I don't see many clips where he's shaking guys in a gap like Bijan Robinson and creating, right? Like, so it's just it's something that's almost like inexplicable in some ways. And then you see the kind of pressure, especially today, that C.J. Stroud was under. I mean, Green Bay was basically just throwing the same looks at them over and over, just loading up the line of scrimmage, running some kind of twist game, and this offensive line just could not pick it up. Whether it was a simulated pressure, an actual blitz, dropping guys out, it continued to just be pressure basically right up the interior or so quickly on the edges that C.J. Stroud can't do what we've really come to expect from him, which is like making a guy miss, stepping up or resetting his feet, and then getting the ball out into the intermediate area or checking it down for yards after the catch. This offensive line is just not playing viable football right now. And to your point about how all the conversations that we've had up to this point, I spent all summer and the beginning of this year talking about Bobby Slowick fraud watch, Bobby Slowick fraud watch.
You're right,
and
man.
there is a lot of time, and there's a lot of time to spend talking about some of the issues that he has as a play caller, and that definitely popped up today. But I don't know what kind of plays you're supposed to call if an offensive line can't keep your guy upright for more than 2 seconds. And there was a lot of problems with that with them in obvious passing downs, and that doesn't allow Stroud to do the magic that we expect to see from him in those obvious passing
He's been doing that all year. Like, the early down offense has been bad all year, and his brilliance on third down has kind of kept that offense afloat. It didn't happen today. He averaged negative 0.7 yards per play per drop back on third down. Negative 0.7. And he was pressured 83% of the time on third down. Like, that's a failure of the protection, the play calling. I do think Slowick shares some of the blame for the offensive line issues. There are things you can do to mitigate that.
Yeah, I mean, that's. I think we've had that discussion before, where it's almost like the test for offensive coordinators. Now, there's only so much you can do, but we've seen some guys around the NFL be able to that's not that's not the greatest 5 guys, but the offense still works, and they come up with answers to help the quarterback. I mean, 55 net yards passing, 10 for 21 for 86 yards, and 4 sacks for C.J. Stroud. I don't know. I think unacceptable is the word we continue to use, and I will continue to say that, because this Texans team, the record is still very good. They're 5-2. They have a +6 point differential. Their defense has played well for most of the season. It's just like the part of the offense, and Nico Collins has been out, but we're finding out like without Nico Collins, they have even fewer answers. So I agree that was the biggest story from this game. But I will give the Packers credit. I thought this was maybe their best defensive performance of the season. There were times in that game where I was like, all right, sorry, Jeff Hafley, I've ripped you pretty relentlessly and not believed in you all season long. But Ruiz, what do you mean? This Packers team is like a roller. Every game is a roller coaster.
I don't know. They tried to give away that game.
Yeah,
that would have been a heartbreaking loss. And Jordan Love played his role in that. You said it wasn't that type of game we were expecting from the quarterbacks, but Jordan Love tried. He tried to have one of those games. He was pushing the ball downfield as he has been all year long. Sometimes those throws get pulled off and they look great. Other times you throw a Quinn Ewers interception like you did on the first interception. It was like the same exact interception Ewers threw against Georgia. I don't know what to think about Jordan Love right now. Like I'm still very high on him, but I mean this version of him. I think in a year or two he's going to be that top 5 quarterback. But right now for this season, sometimes he looks like that top 5 quarterback. Sometimes he looks like a top 20 quarterback.
Is he bored? Is he bored sometimes? It's almost like when you're playing a little cousin or something in bed and you're like, I'll play with my left hand or something. I mean, everything he's doing, it seems like Diante, he's trying to make the degree of difficulty and when it works, I'm just like, wow, I don't know who else in the league could make that throw. But it seems like you don't have to go to that as often as he goes to that.
It's so funny when you contrast his style of play with the offensive setup, because Matt LaFleur does not strike me as hey, I want to live and die on every dropback type of play caller, right? And and this is on both sides of the ball. Jeff Hafley is like that very old school 4-3 from that Legion of Boom tree. We're going to play a lot of zone coverage, mix up the looks, maybe throw you a little something special on third down. But these are both coaches on both sides of the ball that are very much like process oriented, right? So to see this team basically only be good on defense when they're getting sacks and turnovers, and that was a big piece of today. Obviously more with sacks and turnovers for C.J. Stroud up against that coverage unit. And then looking at Jordan Love, and I think that even on the interceptions that he threw, I'm with you. A lot of that is like, okay, I see exactly what you were trying to do. Yeah. Just maybe not right now, right? And I think that because he gets away with it, it does embolden him to take more chances. And for the most part, I think that it works within that offense. And I like the fact that he plays that way, because it does give some very talented playmakers for them an opportunity to go make plays. But I don't think that this team really wants to play high-ceiling football the way that they've been playing right now. But this is very emblematic of their season, today's results. And I think that even when they are playing high-risk, high-reward football, they're so talented that they can get themselves out of trouble. And that's what we've been seeing for them. And it's probably the reason why I regard them so highly, even though, the results on a down-and-out basis can be all over the place.
It's very funny that a team that started Malik Willis in 2 games, like the quarterback that's like, whoa, calm down, buddy, is Jordan Love and not Malik Willis.
Right.
Yeah, but it's like Love is trying to like complete side missions in a video game. It's like, complete a whole shot against cover 2 or you don't get XP in this game.
Maybe he's been hanging out with Brett Favre. Maybe he's...
Hopefully not.
Maybe he's team content. I mean, I don't know that there's a quarterback who's more entertaining than him right now.
There isn't.
Because on any given drop back, you're like, this isn't going to be a check down. He's going to let this rip 30 yards downfield regardlus of... They're driving for the game-winning field goal, and I think it was a 0 blitz, so I understand it.
Yeah.
But he chucked into the end zone for Dontavian Wicks. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy has no off button.
But like Diante said, like it makes sense when you see the coverage and what he's going for. He's just such an ambitious passer.
Yeah.
Like
that's
Brett
the
Favre.
word.
Beautiful word.
1,000%.
Wordsmith.
You got it right.
Yeah, I know. I can't. My vocabulary is not very good, but he is he's the most ambitious passer in the NFL. In a world of checkdowns and take what the defense gives you, his mindset is, I can make this throw. I'm going to try it.
We need more of those quarterbacks.
I agree.
Stop shaming
totally
Anthony
agree.
Richardson.
I agree.
I totally agree.
Stop shaming Anthony Richardson. He's the next one.
I think the turnovers are going to get cut down. And I think by the time we get to Thanksgiving or so, we're going to be like, Packers are right there with the Lions. The highs are too high, and we've seen a stretch last year where he was doing more of the wow and less of the I don't know if you want to do that throws. So unless something inside of him changed, we know he's capable of doing that, and I think we're going to see it down the road.
I think the thing we may have under-indexed is how bad the defensive coordinator has been in Green Bay for the last couple of years. Like, Joe Barry has never coordinated a defense that's finished like top 25 in points scored.
So you think Love is playing with the mindset that Joe Barry is still my defensive coordinator.
That's what it seems like.
He doesn't need to. I like that. That's a good theory too. Yeah, their defense did play well in this game. All right, those were the 3 big matchups. We'll come back. We're planting our flags with some other stuff we saw today. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. This segment, we plant our flags. Can be anything we saw today, anything we're looking at going forward. Diante, lead us off. What are you planting your flag on?
So this is coming off of the Sunday Night Football game that just ended before we started recording.
Also a good one for team content. It was entertaining, if nothing else.
1,000%. And the flag that I'm planting here is that we won't know just how bad this is for the Jets until 2026 or 2027 when we zoom out and look at the whole scope of this, assuming that this season continues on the trajectory that it is right now. There's a chance that we look up and see a team that is bereft of depth and talent in the same ways that we talk about Cincinnati, the same way that we talk about Dallas, because they've lost a net of 2 second-round picks in the Rodgers trade, give up another mid-round pick to acquire Davante Adams. You fire a head coach. Whether or not he was good enough, I think is kind of besides the point. But when you look at that in the grand scheme of things and you add in whiffing on Zach Wilson, you look at every draft outside of the Sauce Gardner one, and there are several misses at key positions that show up when Ashton Davis goes down. It shows up when you're looking like, okay, both starting safeties that were coming into the game are not available, and you were already missing guys at that position ahead of time. The DBs that they've missed on, that shows up there. I do think that Breece Hall obviously has been a big hit for them. Sauce Gardner, you don't have to say much about. Everybody can turn on the tape and see how important he's been for them. But the offensive line talent has been such an issue for them. You think about Mekhi Becton, who's an Eagle now, outside of like Elijah Vera Tucker, maybe Joe Tippmann when he's healthy and playing at his best, you can look at as a serviceable starter. They have so many holes across this roster that when it's all said and done, if this team does not turn this around immediately and finds a way to contend in the AFC, you're going to look at acquiring Aaron Rodgers for 2 years of being adrift. You lose a head coach in the midst of that. And now, as the dead money starts to accumulate, if Rodgers does retire ahead of the end of his contract, if you have to do something with Davante Adams' deal to try to smooth out money in the future, you might be looking at a team that is going to be adrift for much longer than just the next couple of years. And we're going to look back and wonder whether or not this team set itself backwards in pursuit of something that was probably foolhardy to begin with.
We all blame Aaron Rodgers for all their problems, but Joe Douglas is at the heart of all this, going back to the Zach Wilson trade.
And we don't spend enough time talking about how much his decisions have been an issue for this team.
And how many resources he's poured into this roster and how bad it is right now. Like, he inherited... It wasn't a good situation. Like, the team wasn't in a good spot, but the salary cap was in a good spot, and they had draft picks to use, and he's wasted most of them.
1,000%.
What do they have to show for it?
What is Jermaine Johnson giving this team? I know he's on IR right now, but prior to, we're talking about 10 sacks over 2+ some seasons, right? And not really showing that he's carved out a role as a starter. You take a flyer on Will McDonald early in the draft when he's draft eligible. He hasn't provided enough for you. There's just so many different ways you can look at this and say, I understand you're trying to get premium position talent. There is just an element of it that is just like a dice roll or a coin flip. Some guys hit, some guys don't. But the more you zoom out and you look at how he's treated top 100 picks and what he has or hasn't gotten out of them, this is a team that's basically in the same position that the Saints are in a lot of ways, where you've got some good top-end talent, not enough depth. You look at Dallas, they're in the same situation, a lot of top-end talent, not enough depth. And now you're relying on a 40-plus-year-old quarterback to be perfect in ways that he has not demonstrated that he can be coming off an Achilles injury.
Yeah, I think your point's a good one. I mean, you're in addition to the other stuff, you're just trading for Davante Adams and Hassan Reddick. These aren't you're not trading first-round picks or multiple first-round picks, but you are giving up draft capital where when you're trying to build a deeper roster down the road. I kind of go both ways because I was making the argument when they traded for Aaron Rodgers that I like this roster and they have young talent. So I can't, go back and say the talent stunk on the roster. I feel like there were two phases. There was the pre-Aaron Rodgers where they were trying to build the roster the right way. But I agree with you. I mean, they would have so much draft capital that everyone would fawn over their drafts. It's like, yeah, if you have like 3 picks in the top 40, I would hope you would get some good players there. And that they did get some good players, to be fair. I mean, they've got Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams and Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Like, these are good players. But you're right. You look at it overall, and it's not – I think I probably just overrated it, that if you put an average quarterback in there, it's going to look good. Well, it doesn't look good. They're 2-5. They've done everything this year. They fired their head coach. They've changed their play caller. They've traded for Davante Adams. What am I missing? There's probably like 3 other things I'm missing. And you just went out and got embarrassed to Russell Wilson and the Steelers 37-15 on Sunday Night Football. Now you're 2-5. Like, you don't have a next move. What's your next move? Hassan Reddick's coming in. Great. I mean, that's the other thing. The edge rusher situation for them, that used to be a strength. That's not a strength anymore. You were mentioning the draft picks they wasted. 1000%. So I think it's a good point. Yeah, this season probably isn't going to be what they thought it was going to be, and they're not going to kind of realize, well, all right, we went all in. Why did we go all in? But again, as I've said before, when ownership has wanted to do this a certain way, and then you're the GM and you're trying to keep your job, I mean, you can just add it all up 1000%. The way bad organizations stay bad. So the New York Jets, everybody. There you go. All right, Ruiz, what are you planting your flag on?
All right, I've been workshopping this tape behind the scenes. I've been dreading putting it out in public because I don't know how you guys are going to react to this. All right, here's the take. I'm planting my flag. The Deshaun Watson contract, that was a bad move by the Browns. That's the take. That's all I got. That's all I got.
I thought
ambitious.
Yeah, I thought he was about to set us up with, all right, everyone's saying that's the worst contract. But
I was waiting on the hard left turn.
I was like, is this Jalen Hurts? Is this? I'm like, where's he going with that?
No, I think we have to talk about this injury in this game.
Just a way to talk about Deshaun Watson.
Yeah,
okay,
because he
it's
goes
a big
out,
story.
He gets booed or cheered. I don't even know, were the fans booing? Were they cheering? I think they were cheering for the injury. Myles Garrett is complaining after the game about it. He's saying Deshaun Watson's been a model citizen who's done everything right for most of his pro career. Most of his pro career. Most is doing some heavy lifting there. But I think it just speaks to how toxic this whole situation is outside of Deshaun Watson. The ownership, the fans who kind of cheered him on early on. They were supporting him.
All right. Take one more break. We come back. I got something I'm going to plant my flag on. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. All right, my flag plant. The seeds for this were planted in a Diante Lee podcast in August. I don't even remember what the actual topic was, but we were talking about, surprises. What could surprise us this season? And he said, you know what? The Las Vegas Raiders, I'm looking at a guy on their roster. I wonder if he could get traded. I'm going, Davante Adams, yeah. He said, no, not Davante Adams. Maxx Crosby. And I said, all right, listen, Deontay, that's good for content. I like the conversation. They're not trading Maxx Crosby. Here's where I'm planting my flag. They got to look seriously into trading Maxx Crosby right now.
Yeah.
So they had a ho-hum game. It didn't really, they played the Rams. They played relatively tough. They lost by 5 points or whatever it is. Gardner Minshew comes in for Aiden O'Connell, who gets injured, and you're just watching this team going, like, what is the point?
Where are we going?
What are you doing? Like, what is your plan here with Tom Brady as your new owner? And I'm looking at what their options are, and they actually have a very intriguing option, which would be to, not announce publicly, but, leak it to Schefter, whoever you want to leak it to, that Maxx Crosby is available at the right price and see what calls come in. Because we've seen in the past that elite defensive players in their late 20s, he's 27 years old, can, in some cases, net you 2 first-round picks. And if I'm the Raiders and I have an opportunity to turn Maxx Crosby into 2 first-round picks right now, as much as I normally say do not trade young players at premium positions who are awesome, this is like their only move is to get those picks and start rebuilding and try to come up with a plan to land a quarterback. Because Maxx Crosby's great, but we've seen it throughout his career. Yep. It doesn't matter that much for your team success if your quarterback sucks. So I don't know if they're going to think outside the box and do that, but I legitimately think this is something they need to do like right now because teams get desperate in season. Remember a few years ago, the Rams were willing to give up 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns. Crosby's 27. He's under contract for the next 2 years at a pretty reasonable rate for a player of his stature. He plays almost every snap. I mean, he's ridiculously productive. If you're a contending team, you might say, this is our time to take a swing. So Maxx Crosby has to be on the trade block basically by the time this podcast ends.
I didn't want to bring up Brian Burns because he's several degrees better than Burns was in Carolina to me. But
Burns was on a rookie contract. That
is another complicating factor as well. But to me, when you look at how the Panthers handled that situation, ultimately they had to be faced with the fact that they had a young centerpiece talent that they could not utilize to the best of his ability, and that he would be more valuable to them as a trade chip than he would be on the roster. And by the time they finally accepted that, the value wasn't anywhere near what it could have been if they had struck when they knew interest was high. I'm not saying that this is necessarily the best management of the roster in 2024. That's where I'm with you on. Even though I did give you that take at that point, and the season has kind of played out in the way that I laid out at that time, I'm not saying that it's the best thing to get wins now or the best thing to get wins in 2025. But if you know you're going to need a quarterback, which they do, I don't really know how much longer you can look at Antonio Pierce as a head coach and say that he's the answer there. So this might actually be one of the few opportunities that an organization gets to have a clean break and not be at a deficit in terms of its cap situation, in terms of its draft capital. You can actually look clear-headedly at the field. Maybe if you're able to get out ahead of this, you can start to compete for the top head coaching candidates. You can go clear house with the GM as well and think about who the best roster managers are that are available. This is a clean opportunity, I think, for them because they are not saddled with the same kind of baggage that a lot of other bad teams can be in these situations where you can maybe float Maxx Crosby, even if you don't get 2, if you were able to get a 1 plus another top 100 pick, which I think is what we were discussing at that time, that would be a boon for this organization when we know that they're going to be shopping for a quarterback in the near future.
And we have seen teams trade 2 first-round picks in season. The Rams did it. They didn't do it for Burns, but they did it for Jalen Ramsey in 2019.
Yeah.
So it
is possible. That made a huge difference for that team. So.
That definitely made a huge difference. So did trading a first for Von Miller a year later or 2 years later. As a football fan, I just want to see Crosby traded. I want to see him in the playoffs, playing in big games.
Yeah,
he deserves to play meaningful football.
I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, it's not that he's just like one of the most productive defensive ends. It's how he plays the game, and the motor never stops. Yeah. He's just a fun player. He just blows up run plays. It's rushing the passer. He's a phenomenal player who I think would make a difference for a team like Detroit, who he would be an upgrade over Aiden Hutchinson. He's a better player than Aiden.
And then you have both those guys for the next 3 years, and then you can re-sign them if you want to. I mean, you're trying to win right now, a team like that.
But the reason why I would advocate for this trade, where I might not do it in other situations, I don't think you should trade your best players when you have nothing else to root for, like when the fan base doesn't. But it's not like they're just a quarterback away. This team is a lot of pieces away. They're not going to be able to solve this by the time that Crosby is still in his prime, right. I don't think. So I think you have to be realistic about the timeline, especially with Tom Brady coming in. I feel like that's going to usher in a new era for the team. I think they're going to start doing things differently. Yeah. You would think, like, why else would Brady agree to join if he's not going to have some say?
Clearly, in Mark Davis's mind, he thinks that he's going to draft a quarterback, and Tom Brady's going to turn him into another Tom Brady.
Right? Yeah. Maybe he'll wait till the 6th round to draft him. I don't know, but yeah, this team has a far ways to go, and I think you're doing right by Maxx Crosby by trading him.
Now, you were early on the Bill Belichick Jaguars. Is there any Bill Belichick Brady Raiders? Smoke? Does that
imagine Belichick having Brady as his boss. I can't see that.
No way. I think Alex Guerrero has a better chance of becoming the Raiders' next head coach.
All right. Well, maybe they'll do that. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it's Brock Bowers.
That's it. That's pretty good, though.
Yeah, he looks great.
Yeah, it's been him and Maxx Crosby. That's been it. And that is not enough to win in the league. And it's so clear that this team does not have what it needs to win right now.
Accumulate resources. You're going to be bad this season. You get a first-round pick, maybe 2 first-round picks, and now you have 3 first-round picks. And think about how you're going to go about getting a quarterback and then everything else, to Ruiz's point. So thanks to everyone for watching on FanDuel TV. Remember, you can listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.